And this is what she said: winners think about what they want to happen. Losers think about what they don't want to happen. So winners can override their negative brains and focus on the things they want to occur. Losers focus on the negative aspects of competition and can't see the value pursuing a goal or a dream. Most people will never get where they want to be in life because they won't stop whining and complaining about where they're at.
Welcome to the Skilled Dad podcast. This is the podcast for dads of all seasons to learn the things that they can do and engage so that they can go and equip the next generation for success. Here we sit down with everyday dads just like you to learn from their story, get inspired, and then start getting after it. So we invite you to join in, see what you can take away from this story and apply to your life on your journey to becoming the Skilled Dad.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Skilled Dad podcast. My name is Zach Reese. I'm your host, and I have a gentleman on with me today that we had the opportunity to get to know each other a little bit prior to sitting on this call. And what was a 15-minute conversation turned into like an hour-long conversation just because it was so great and rich. And Mr. Terry Tucker is here with me today, and I got to learn about his story. We got connected through a platform that we both use. He is no newbie to podcasts, right? Terry, you have done like over 600 podcasts. Is that right?
Yeah, probably approaching 700, but I've totally lost count because I use so many different platforms that I can't keep straight. But I've been very fortunate to be on quite a few.
I love it. So this is going to be like a professional episode because this is like a walk in the park for you. But no, Terry, in the time that we had to talk, man, he left an impact on me just with some of his stories that he had and some of the commonalities that we had, and just really enjoyed it. So I'm looking forward to this. And Terry, I just want to say thanks for joining me on the Skilled Dad podcast.
Well, Zach, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you.
Yeah, well, let's do it. Let's just dive in because we're talking about all the things that you've experienced. And so you're a dad of one.
Correct.
And you were sharing a little bit about when you first became a dad and then having a daughter, which I think a lot of us could probably relate to. And I'd love to let's just open it with that because that was hilarious. And that just sets the tone for some of the dad skills that we're about to learn from you.
Yeah. So I grew up with two brothers and no sisters. And I went to an all boys Catholic high school in Chicago. And then I went to an all-male military college, the Citadel. The Citadel's co-ed, actually Marist is co-ed as well now. And so when my wife and I went to the OBGYN when she was pregnant, and the doctor said, "Would you like to know the sex of the baby?" And we were like, "Sure, that'd be great." And he said, "Well, I think you should buy pink." And I was like, "Oh, no. You need to leave it in there until it's done." Absolutely not. I have no idea how to raise a girl. You know, I think back now, our daughter was born literally in the middle of March Madness, the college basketball tournament. And I had her in one arm and the remote in the other arm. It was like this. It doesn't get any better than this. You know, I've got my daughter, I've got basketball. It doesn't get any better in life than this.
I love that. And you kind of set the tone for it too, because you were saying that you ended up coaching her basketball team. So born in the middle of March Madness, and now here we go, basketball time.
And it was such a different experience coaching girls. You know, I mean, you get to, I think guys play for a different reason than girls do. Girls are more about the camaraderie, the relationships, the friendships that they develop amongst their teammates. I'm not saying guys don't, but I don't think it's as paramount as it is for girls. And I'll give you a quick story. So I'm in the middle of a game and I point to one of the girls on the bench and I'm like, "Go in for so-and-so." She gives me the affirmative shake of the head, and I can see out of the corner of my eye the scores table. There's nobody there. So I turn back to her and I'm like, "Get in the game for so-and-so." And she gives me the affirmative head shake. And again, out of the corner of my eye, nobody's there. So then I turn back to her and I'm like, get in the game. Now she's shaking me off like a major league pitcher, doesn't like the sign that the catcher's calling. No, I don't like that. I'm like, what? No, I mean, so I bring her to me and I'm like, why don't you want to go in the game? And the tears start down the cheeks. And I'm like, what's wrong? She said, Coach, I don't want to play because I'm afraid if I make a mistake, my friends in the stands are going to make fun of me. I said, what about your responsibility to your teammates? You come out here every day. You work hard to get better yourself, and you work hard to make your teammates better. Don't you have a responsibility to them as well? And I'm sitting the whole time I'm sitting there thinking, are we really having a counseling session in the middle of a high school basketball game? But we absolutely were. So eventually I talked her into going to the game, but it was something that was so foreign to me because, as a guy, it didn't matter how terrible you were. If the coach wanted you in the game, you were up and off the bench and you were in the game. So this was just something different for me.
Well, not just as a guy, but I mean, you, like you said, brothers that you had, and then going in the Citadel. Was it co-ed you said at the time?
Not when I was there. It was all male when I was there.
Yeah. So you kind of grew up in like kind of the man's culture.
I did.
And then you better buy pink. So, that's a shift. I love what you said about what about your responsibility to your teammates, right? And I might be taking this a little different direction, but what immediately came to mind was we think about all the things that we might want to do and kind of the image of ourselves and what other people might think based on wherever you want to take that. What about the responsibility to your teammates? And in this case, like your family, right? Your team was your family in that basketball team, and kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis, making sure that what we're doing is responsibility to our teammates. So I love it. Thanks for opening that, just as an icebreaker, because I love that story. It got me. But I'd love for you I'm just going to kind of hand the mic to you and tell us a little bit more about yourself. Love to hear, what you have going on with the 4 Truths, which we'll definitely jump into. But, I did a small bio. Love to hear from you and what you'd say.
Yeah. So I grew up on the south side of Chicago. Like I said, I'm the oldest of 3 boys. You can't tell this from looking at me or from my voice, but I'm 6'8" tall. And I went to the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina on a basketball scholarship. I got another brother who's 6'7", who was a pitcher at the University of Notre Dame. Another brother who was 6'6", was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers, the National Basketball Association. And then my dad was 6'5". So we sort of joked that if you sat behind our family in church growing up, not a prayer's chance you were going to see anything that was going on, in the front of the church. But our 5'8" mother was really the boss. It didn't matter how big, tall, strong we were, whatever mom said, that's the way it went. And we're talking about dads, and I go back to, the beginning. I mean, our parents taught us the value of family, of loving each other, of caring for each other, of supporting each other. And my parents used to do what I call divide and conquer parenting, where it was, I'd have a game at 5:00 on Thursday at this location, and my brother would have a practice at 5:00 on Thursday at another location. So dad's going with me, mom's going over here. And our whole family literally revolved around sports, around athletics, our entire life. And that's just what we did. We enjoyed it. We loved it. And our parents supported us. But at the same time, our parents supported us with the understanding that we support each other. That, if you don't have a game or something tonight, you're going to your brother's game or your brother's practice and you're supporting him. So it was just a great time in my life. I loved it. And then, now I have cancer and I've had some amputations and things like that. And I talk a lot about the 4 truths: controlling your mind, embracing your pain. What you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. And then as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. Those are what I call kind of the bedrock of my soul. I just think they're a good place to kind of build a quality life off of.
Where did you get those from?
Honestly, I was on a podcast that was the 3 truths. And I'm like, boy, I better come up with my 3 truths. And I'm literally, it forced me to think about really what was important, what was sort of the bedrock that I knew was unshakable. And I had 3. And then I we're human beings. We like things in threes, ABC and, 1, 2, 3. We like things in threes, but I added the fourth one, which was the legacy truth of what you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. Just because I think it's incredibly important, sort of, regardless of what stage of life you're in, to sort of think about the end game of your life. What are people going to say about you at your funeral? What do you want them to say about you at your funeral?
How long ago was that you were on that podcast and you're like, I better come up with the fourth?
Probably
here,
about 3 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. So can you read them back one more time?
First one is control your mind, or your mind is going to control you. Second one is embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life. And use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger and more resilient individual. The third one is the legacy truth. What you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. And then the last one is, as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated.
I love those. So I'd like to use those maybe as a way just to take from your experience and your learnings, right? Because not only in raising your daughter, but also the teams that you've coached, the sports that you've been on. I mean, been a part of. There's a lot of takeaways from those, right? And I think a lot of them too are applicable. Let me say it this way. When you coach teams, in some ways you become that role model. In many ways, that role model for other people that may not have that coach at home. And so there's still learnings and takeaways. So when we look at control your mind or control you, my mind goes to a lot of different places on what that could pertain to. But when you came up with that, like what was the thing that led you to control your mind or control you?
Yeah, I learned that one early in my life. I was a really good athlete in high school, but I also had 3 knee surgeries, and my first 2 knee surgeries were pre-arthroscopic surgery. So I have the large zipper scar on the outside of my knee. But I remember when I went back playing basketball after those knee surgeries, my brain was putting all kinds of negative thoughts into my mind. Things like, you're probably a step slower since your surgeries. College coaches aren't going to be interested in reaching out and recruiting you. And I remember thinking, wait a minute, I am still playing at an elite level, and coaches are still interested in recruiting me to play for their college or university. So I learned early, 15 years old, that I needed to change the narrative. I needed to sort of change what my brain was putting into my thoughts. And then the more I started reading about it, the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio, they've done a lot of research on brains and the mind. And they estimate that on any given day, we have about 60 to 70,000 thoughts that pass through our mind, about 95% of which are the same thoughts from previous days, which means on any given day, we have about 3,500 new thoughts. And the interesting thing about it is your brain can still only hold one thought at a time. Why would you want to make that a negative thought? And I wrote a book in 2020. One of the chapters that I put in it was this. Most people think with their fears and their insecurities instead of using their minds. And I know I've done that. I know I want to do this. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I don't know enough, or, maybe I don't have enough information. Maybe I'm not smart enough, or what will people think about me if I think? That's thinking with our fears and insecurities. That's not thinking with our minds.
So you learned it early. And I think I'll speak for myself. I can't speak for everyone listening, but that it takes a lot of practice and discipline to learn how to control that, right? Between the 60, 70,000 thoughts. Love what you said about you have one at a time that you can do effectively. Why choose the one that's going to cause the most anguish? But how do you, what are some things that you've learned on how to control that? Because I like to say control the controllables. And the number one controllable I have is my thoughts and my actions. Thoughts can be challenging. So I'm curious what you've learned and how to mitigate that.
So let me give you a story about somebody who has done it much more effectively than I.
Mhm.
When I was at the Citadel, we had a president by the name of James Stockdale, who retired as a vice admiral from the Navy. But in 1965, he was a naval aviator, and he was shot down in his A4 during the Vietnam War and spent almost 8 years routinely being beaten, tortured, and denied medical care for his severely damaged knee that he had hurt when he ejected from the aircraft. And I didn't spend a lot of time around Admiral Stockdale, but I remember being at an event one time where somebody asked him, who were the people that survived that ugliness, that brutality, that torture? And he said, let me tell you the people who didn't survive. He said, it wasn't the big, tough, strong guys that thought that they could handle any kind of abuse or torture. And the other group that he said, and this really kind of surprised me, he said the other group that didn't survive were the optimists. He said these were people that thought they would be rescued or let go by, Thanksgiving, Christmas, or Easter, and Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter would come and go, and we wouldn't be rescued. And he said those people died of a broken home. He said the people who survived were the people who understood what they could control, which according to Stockdale was their breathing and the thoughts in their mind. He said everything else was at the discretion of the enemy and controlled it. And Zach, that's where I think we get in trouble. We try to control things that are outside of our purview, that are outside of our control.
Yeah.
And so when people ask me the question, what I tell them is, if you've got a problem and it's vexing you, write down every problem, everything you have with that situation, with that issue, and then cross out all the things that you have no control over. And what you're left with are the things that you can control. And focus on those, concentrate on those, work on those, and don't spend all that time. Yeah, I mean, we've seen so many people, mental illness and all that kind of stuff, because people try to control things they have no control over whatsoever. That's
Right.
one of the things that I learned from Admiral Stockdale.
I love that. That's quite a story. That exercise too is very simple to do, right? Just being consistent with doing it if you find yourself in that place. So there's a practical, tactical tip to go and do that. So control your mind or no control you. Very good. I love that. And control the controllables, but you need to know what they are.
Right.
Okay. So embrace the.
Well, but that's why writing them down is so great. It's like, all these things about me. Okay, I can't control that. I can't control that. But I can control this. Focus on that.
Right. And okay. This is a dad's podcast, right? And number one, we're all men, and moms that are listening, we're all people, right? But talking to the dad specifically, like we're all men. We all have similar, what I've found is we have similar DNA of challenges and things that we're doing, and we think we're the only ones. And oftentimes it's a bunch of baloney, right? But we don't want to talk to anybody about it because, what we said before, what would they think? Yada, yada, yada. I've got 3 kids, all different personalities. So one of the number one things that I've learned is, as much as I'd love to control some of the things they do, I mean, it's another person. It's like, you can't control other people. For some reason with your kids, you're kind of thinking it's different. It's not. So I'm curious if you ran into that at all and what you learned from that, and maybe some things that you did, good or bad, that you learned from, that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We get to learn from you.
Yeah. My wife's niece and her family were here for spring break, just left today. And we were talking about, they have an 8-year-old son. And then we were talking about when our daughter was 8 years old. And my wife is an incredibly great cook and makes great food, tastes great. It's not like, oh, this is terrible, I don't want to eat it. But our daughter got into a phase one time where she was like, I don't want this. I want a hot dog. So we said, okay, you can have a hot dog, $2. And she would let, it's like, so she would go up to her piggy bank and get $2 and bring it down to us. And okay, hot dogs are in the refrigerator. You know how to use the microwave. Go ahead and do that. She'd make herself a hot dog. And then the next night, same thing. I want a hot dog. No problem. $2. It felt so mercenary. It really, it was like, we're taking our daughter's piggy bank, and we're basically depleting it But it was an incredibly valuable lesson to her, because when that last point where, I don't know, it was 4 or 5 days, that it was like, want a hot dog? Okay, $2. What? Well, I don't have $2. Oh, I guess, well, you either eat what mom has or you go to bed without any dinner. It's your choice. And lo and behold, she ate what mom ate, and what mom made and what we had and stuff like that. And that quickly got away, and quickly that stopped. It never happened again. It was, she was just in a phase. And I don't know if it was school or whatever, but yeah, that was one thing that we did.
I love that tact. I'm going to borrow that from you, because what I love about that is that you've removed the power struggle, especially if you've got any kids that are strong-willed, is one of the terms, downright, getting under your skin from time to time. No, it's not a battle of wills. It's very objective. It's like, cool, here's what you got to do to get there. I love that. They're going to need to start mowing the yard too. No, I love that. Okay. Number 2, embrace the pain and difficulty. And I'm cheating because I do have these written down right here. Embrace the pain and difficulty we all experience in life, and use that pain to make you stronger and more resilient. Where'd that one come from?
Just starting to it really kind of came out of the first one of controlling your mind. It goes to our brains being hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure. So to the brain, the status quo, the way things are hey, it's comfortable and familiar and should just be left alone. But we've heard this a million times. The only way you're going to grow, the only way you're going to get better, the only way you're going to improve is if you step outside those comfort zones and you do things that make you uncomfortable. One of my favorite writers is a guy by the name of Ernest Hemingway. And he had a quote. It goes like this: life breaks everyone, and afterward, many are stronger at the broken places. And I just love that. It's just like breaking an arm. You break your arm, it heals, it's stronger at the place that it broke. It's the same thing with your spirit. It's the same thing with the pain that you experience in life. Can you use that pain? We're all going to experience pain. Every one of us is going to experience pain. And it doesn't have to be like me, cancer pain. It could be as simple as you break up with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, or, the plane you're leaving on to go on vacation, the flight gets canceled, or someone else at work gets the promotion that you believe you deserve. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Suffering depends on what you do with that pain. Do you take it? Do you use it to make you a stronger and more determined individual? Or do you wallow in it and feel sorry for yourself and want others to feel sorry for you? Now I'm going to give you another story, but I'm really going to date myself with this story. So just hang with me on this. So 1976, it was our country's bicentennial celebration. It was also the year of my 16th birthday. There was a U.S. gold medal winning Olympic swimmer by the name of Shirley Babashaw, who had one of the greatest yet simplest quotes that I ever heard. And this is what she said: winners think about what they want to happen. Losers think about what they don't want to happen. So winners can override their negative brains and focus on the things they want to occur. Losers focus on the negative aspects of competition and can't see the value pursuing a goal or a dream. Most people will never get where they want to be in life because they won't stop whining and complaining about where they're at. Very few people take personal responsibility for their own success.
That's a good quote. That's very good. Winners think about what they want to happen. Losers think about what they don't want to happen. This is the mindset that takes on positive versus negative.
It is.
Oh, no, that's really good. I totally do this podcast just selfishly. There's no one listening to this. Probably it's just me taking all the points away. There was a story. It's related to something different, but I think it relates to something you said about comfort and growth in pain. And I think, there's Jocko Willink is who I think about. I said, like, embrace the suck is known for saying that a lot. But when we're in a place of comfort, it can be kind of like a jail cell where it's really nice, it's comfortable, and the door is wide open. But because it's wide open, we don't necessarily want to go, or because it's so comfortable, we don't necessarily want to leave the cell because we don't necessarily know what's out there, and it could be less comfortable. But without that, we're always just trapped in a jail of where we are in comfort without seeing what could be out there if we embrace the opportunity and take the pains along with it, because in that pain is growth. So,
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's something that I think, especially younger people, don't see. They don't see the value of failing. And not failing for failing's sake, but failing for the knowledge that you can get from it. Nelson Mandela, the former president of South Africa, used to say, I never lose. I either learn or I win.
mhm.
So if you can go out there and make mistakes, and especially when you're young, when you don't have the responsibilities of kids and, a mortgage and all that kind of stuff, make a ton of mistakes, but not for the sake of the mistake, but for the sake of what you learn, for the knowledge that you gain from making that mistake and applying it to the next endeavor that you do. And but that's the other problem. We get caught up in the fact that, we care about that little device that we all carry around, what somebody says on it.
Mhm.
Zach said he really liked my hat today, or, he really liked I'm like, nothing personal, Zach, but you've never lived in my brain. Why do you care what Zach says?
Right.
Yeah, and I'm obviously, I'm just using this as an example, but so many people care about what other people say on social media that they would never say to their face.
Mhm.
And that drives me nuts. That used to happen with our daughter as well. So,
Keyboard warrior side of
yeah.
it. In conflict can be healthy, and is healthy in the right, and the right circumstance. Hostile confrontation is not usually that great. So, and that might be a point we talk about later with some of your previous experience. But, you said something about the failure side of things, and for most of us on here, I'm gonna take a stab that we've got kids. Many of us probably have mortgages, but that mindset of failure, it isn't failure if you're learning from it, like Mandela had said.
Right.
But there's little things every day that's like, hey, what is the risk reward ratio here? And if it's going to put you and your family in jeopardy, yeah, you better do some research on that. If it's learning how to do something new, that go do it, because you're going to learn something out of it. I guarantee it. These podcasts always go so fast, but okay. What you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people. Where'd that one come from? I'm just curious, the kind of the core of these things, because that's where the mind is. And also, I wonder why you took your hat off earlier, but now I understand. It's because I told you I liked it, and you're like, you don't know me. Take it off.
Yeah. No. I mean, this sort of legacy one really kind of, I added it because, in all honesty, I'm probably coming towards the end of my life with my cancer journey and that. And it's like, okay, I've had time. I've got time to think about that.
Mhm.
And you probably know, I know you're honest. I'm much older than you are, but most of us have heard about or know or see about Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers on his television show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, educated so many children, including me, on public television growing up. So when Fred Rogers dies in 2003, his family is going through his effects, and they find his wallet. And inside his wallet is a scrap piece of paper on which Mr. Rogers had written 4 simple words: life is for service. And I think that's an incredibly powerful thing. One of the things that team sports taught me, and for me, it was sports, I think it'd be whatever team you're on, is the importance of being part of something that's bigger than yourself. You realize on a team that if you don't do your job, not only do you let yourself down, but you let your teammates down, your coaches down, your fans down, your parents down, etc. Think about it. The biggest team game that we all play is this game of life.
Hmm.
So I think it's important for all of us to sort of step back and say, what do we want people to say about us at our funeral? What are they going to say about us? Terry was a really jerk, or whatever. I mean, or no, that's something I remember It was a miniseries years ago called Band of Brothers. It was World War II, great series. But they talked about each of the individual soldiers that survived the war. And there was a guy by the name of George Luz. I still remember this. And they made a point of saying, as a testament to his character, 1,600 people showed up at his funeral.
Mm-hmm.
The guy was a handyman. That's what he did for a living. I mean, can you imagine 1,600 people showing up at your funeral, that you made such an impact on their life that 1,600 people show up? I mean, I can't even imagine something like that.
Man, phenomenal show. Watch it like every November, just going into the holiday season. There's a lot of ways we can impact people's lives, and a lot of times we won't even know the impact we leave. So I love that mindset. I mean, these are mindset things that just help remind us. And you've mentioned being older than us. Well, hey, thank you for that, because the point, of all of us being on here is learning from other dads, and you've experienced things that there's no way I possibly could have experienced, just math and life, right? Because my kids aren't there yet. And so what you've experienced and what you've learned is, you're kind of coaching me and coaching us that are listening and sharing that. So I love it and appreciate that.
Sure.
As long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated.
Yeah. That I think is pretty self-explanatory. The way that resonates with me, especially having cancer, is that someday my pain is going to end. It may have through surgery, it may have through the development of some new medication. Quite frankly, it may end when I die. But if I quit, if I give in, if I give up to pain, then pain is always going to be a part of my life. I'm going to tell you another story, true story. Back in the 1950s, there was a professor at Johns Hopkins University who did a very simple experiment with rats. He took rats and he put them in a tank of water that was over their head. And he wanted to see how long the average rat could tread water. The average rat treaded water for about 15 minutes. And just as those rats were getting ready to drown, he reached in, grabbed them, pulled them out, dried them off, and let them rest for a while. And then he took the exact same rats, put them back in the exact same tank of water. And the second time around, on average, those rats treaded water for 60 hours.
Whoa.
Think about that. First time, 15 minutes. It's not like your business is going to fail or you're going to flunk a test. You're going to die. Your life is going to be over. And the second time around, 60 hours, which taught me two things. Number one, the importance of hope in our lives. That, if you're doing the right, maybe not today, maybe not this month, maybe not even this year, but there's a very good chance that somewhere down the road, you will get what you want. Not 100%, but a very good chance. And the second thing it taught me was just how much more our physical bodies can handle than we ever thought they could. We quit, we give up, we give in long before our body does, because going back to number one, we can't control our minds. Our mind said, this is uncomfortable, this hurts, I don't like this, stop it. And we go along with it. If you can push through that, just like an Olympic or a marathon runner, there's always that wall that marathon runners talk about. They hit that wall. I don't think I can go on. But if you can push past that, all of a sudden you get a new burst of energy. Same thing happens with your body. Your body can handle so much more than you ever thought it could.
You said 16 hours?
60.
That's what I thought, but wow.
Yeah.
So I'm just adjusting this real quick. With all these pieces, and giving up starts in the mind. Like you said, the body can do so much more than we think. And so even from going back to number one, control your mind or control you. Without that one, all these other ones are going to be really, really hard to do.
Yeah. I mean, people used to ask me, is there one that's more important than the other? And initially I said, no, they're all equally important. But the more I learn, the more I read, the more I grow. Yeah, number one, if you can't control your mind, the rest of these are incredibly hard to do.
Yeah. And just, being able to embrace the challenges that come and look at them, because that's a mind thing, look at it in a way that okay, there's a positive thing out of this. I'm going to have to, we all want to avoid pain, but at the same time, don't avoid it at the cost of not getting the benefits of it.
Right.
The mindset piece, I mean, George Laws and having 1,600 people, there had to be something there.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for him, obviously, but something there that when you go in, sometimes you have to really be intentional with what you're doing. And that's something you've adopted that now becomes who you are. But it had to start somewhere, especially what he experienced. And then, as long as you don't quit, never be defeated, we give up too early sometimes. And so all these things, what was the context in which these were created? You may have said it and I missed it, but like you learn them over time, but was it just kind of life learnings that you had that became kind of the motto to go by?
Yeah, it was that podcast of, your three truths.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to have my three truths. And what are my three? And I just didn't want to throw something out there because I think unless you really, you internalize it, it's part of you. It's phony. It's fake.
Right.
People will see through that. It's like, you don't really believe this. I believe these things. I live these things every single day of my life. And I think we should, as dads, as spouses, as things like that, that they're incredibly important. I was listening to a podcast he did with Tyler Graham and, 6 kids, and he was talking about, I didn't get enough sleep. I was a police officer and I worked nights. My wife's worked days. And we made a conscious decision to say, you know what? We're never going to miss our daughter's basketball games, piano recitals, plays, parent teacher conferences. And I think there were nights I went to work on 3 hours of sleep, and I carried a gun and, had to make decisions that potentially affected people's lives, but it was always family first. That was, after our faith, family was that important. And I didn't want to be an absentee dad. I didn't want to be, dad's sleeping. You got to, no, what do you need to do? Let's do it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I remember Tyler saying that, how, I got 2 hours of sleep one night. I understand.
Yeah. There's a lot of guys that are probably nodding their heads right now.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, well, the reason I asked that is because here's my takeaway. Maybe I'm way off base. You tell me. It took somebody asking you the question, what are your three truths, to then kind of do an evaluation that then came up with something that is impactful and important that you've been able to use. But up to that point, you hadn't necessarily thought about that specific, hey, what are my three truths? Now, I'm sure you have at some point, but it took somebody to prompt you to where you're now going to be on a microphone and talk about it. That then you came up with this, and it's a powerful piece. Am I right in that? Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, I never consciously said, what are my three truths? I knew there were things that I believed. And I think we talk a lot about values, where do you learn your values? You learn your values at home. I'll give you an example. I had a job interview. My first job out of college was in the marketing department at Wendy's. I was interviewing towards the end of my career at Wendy's for other marketing jobs. And I interviewed at a packaging company. And I spent 90 minutes, an hour and a half with the senior vice president of marketing. And we spent that entire time talking about my life up till I graduated from college. That was the end of the interview. And I remember saying to him afterwards, I said, I got to ask you, this is the strangest interview I've ever had. You never asked me one question about business or marketing or my philosophy or would I be a good fit for the group? I said, what? He said, well, I've got plenty of people around me that will tell me whether you're a good fit for the group. By the way, I didn't get the job. And, but he said, I want to hire people of good character. And he said, I believe character is developed in the first 20 years of your life. And he said, character's caught. It's not taught. You're not going to read a book and say, I got good character. It's just like our kids. Our kids are going to watch us do something and say, boy, I really like the way mom handled that. Or, boy, I didn't like the way dad handled that one. And that's how you develop your character. And this, kids are like sponges. I mean, they soak everything, even things that you don't want them to. And I remember when I became a police officer, my wife had to pull me aside. She's like, your language at home has got to change immediately because our daughter cannot be hearing the words that and she was absolutely right. It's like, no, I'm setting an example here. And I didn't realize that I was doing what I was doing.
They're the best mirror.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's really humbling. Yes, it's kind of an unfiltered thing where we get to see the best and worst of ourselves. And that's also an opportunity because it's painful when you see it.
Yep.
But it's an opportunity to take that and turn it around. Well, so part of the reason I asked that is when you came up with these three truths, I guess I see it as an opportunity to say, I'm reflecting as we're talking here. Hey, what are my three truths? Like I have a lot of writings and I have a lot of pieces. Now, hopefully people are listening. You've got a mission statement. You've got your vision that you've got lined up for your family and for you. But like, what are those three truths? Because you have just asked me that without asking me that through this conversation. And so what an opportunity for us to sit back after we, hit the stop button and say, hey, what are my truths? Because, I know about a third of my audience, you're in, between 25 and early 30s. How awesome to get a head start and say, you know what are my three truths? Or four or whatever. Don't go crazy with 100, right? But like, what are they? And for all of us, I think that's a great exercise to go and do and do that evaluation, and then maybe give ourselves a grade on how we're doing. If those are our truths, how are we doing so far? Because now we have a chance to flip it around or pour gas on it if we're doing well. So thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay. With the remaining time that we have, outside of the four truths, which is a great breakdown, what are for those guys that, all of us that are on here in your time as being a dad, and even what you're facing, what are three pieces that you would say you've learned? Well, we've got your truths, but in the specific kind of dad area, three pieces that you've learned or you've taken away that you would bestow on somebody else to say, hey, here's what I've experienced. Here's what I learned as being a dad, and what I would encourage you to do or to learn from what I've experienced.
I'd say the first one, and I see this especially amongst young dads, is remember this: you're their parent, you're not their friend. And I think that's such a hard thing. I think people work so hard, and mom and dad are at the office and they feel guilty and they want to be the friend of their kid. You got to make the tough decisions. You got to be the one that says, oh, Sally's having a party tonight. Oh, Sally's mom and dad aren't going to be there. Yeah, you're not going to the party. And what happens? They go banging up the stairs, slam the door. I hate. That's when you say, I understand that, but I made that decision because I love you. And that's how important you are in my life. Our daughter was diagnosed with some learning issues in like 4th, 5th grade. Things we didn't see, we didn't know. We got her the psychological help with those things. We got her with a learning specialist, and I'll be honest, one of the greatest days of my life is the day, and I may get emotional, is the day my daughter walked across the stage at the United States Air Force Academy, got her diploma, and shook hands with the President of the United States because she was able to overcome. And my wife and I pushed her. It's like, no, you're going to learning specialist today. Sorry, you're not playing with your friends. Do the things you need to do to get your kids, to set your kids up for success in life. And the last thing I'll say is be involved in their life. Know who their friends are. Know that they're hanging out. There's that old thing that's, you'll turn out based on the 5 people you hang around with the most. Yep. So if you're hanging around with goofs and stuff like that, you'll turn into a goof. If you hang around with people that are smart and want to get better and have tenacity and discipline and good habits, you'll be that kind of person. So know who your parents or know who your kids are hanging out with. And I'll tell you one of the greatest things in my life. So I coach my daughter in basketball. Some of the greatest conversations we ever had in our life were those days in the gym during the summer when she's just putting up thousands and thousands and thousands of shots and I'm rebounding them for her. And we're just talking about life. And those to me, I mean, till the day I die, those will be some of the great, nothing interesting, nothing important, nothing special, but just that connection. I connected with my daughter. And I'll end with this. So one of the nurses who takes care of me is a former hospice nurse. For those who don't know about hospice, end of life care. They take care of people at the end of their life. And she's an infusion nurse now. She's recommended this book called Imagine Heaven. And it's about near-death experiences, people who die and then medical science will bring them back. And one of the things I got out of that book was no matter who the person died, who they saw, whether it was, Jesus or an angel or a saint or a relative or a friend or whatever it was, one question everybody got asked was, how do you treat my people? In other words, how do we treat each other? How do we care about each other? How do we love each other? How do we make each other better? We certainly need to do that with our families, but imagine if you expanded that and did it with your colleagues and, your friends and things like that. Imagine how much better life would be.
We could use a lot of that right now. Always. No, thank you for sharing those. And where can people find you if they want to learn more about what you got going on and kind of keep tabs with you?
Yeah, so I have a blog / website called Motivational Check. You can leave me a message there. Recommendations for books to read, videos to watch. My social media links are all there. It's motivationalcheck.com.
Okay, cool. I'll include that in the notes as well. It's funny. I remember when we talked, you didn't tell me about what was necessarily going on with you until the very end. And it caught me by surprise. You also didn't tell me you're 6'8" until about halfway through. And I was like, I'm going to lift my chair up a little higher because I'm not that. But with what you're facing, I mean, you have so much enthusiasm and just strength that comes from you. And I just want to say thank you. And I remember what you said, which was you didn't necessarily do a lot of dad podcasts up to this point. And I was like, I don't have a huge audience. I want to make sure it's fair to your time. And you had said, I'm paraphrasing, but you just want to be part of it to give back. And when we go back to the discussion about, life is for service, I appreciate you just sharing just a tiny fraction of your story, because I know there's so much more. And for myself and for those of you listening, I would be praying for you, be thinking about you. And as you're going through this, I know it's hard. I was beside my brother as he faced it. But you've got myself and all those that are listening and rooting for you. And, however we can help, we'd love to be there. But man, you've already helped us. So thank you so much, Terry, for being on here with me.
Well, Zach, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed talking with you.
And go Cubs. Since you're a Southside, right? Or Cubs fan. It's good.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Terry.
You're welcome.
Guys, if you've listened up to this point, there's some huge takeaways in here. And here's what I love is that Terry's 4 truths that he kind of dug down and looked at and said, hey, what are the 4 truths that hit me based on my life? They're simple, but that's the power of them. They're simple to understand, but man, sometimes they're hard to enact. And when Terry talked about the Band of Brothers, one reason I love that show is the camaraderie that is there. So one of the things that I would just encourage you to do is share this with somebody if they come to mind, because there's a lot of great takeaways here that Terry shared with us. But also go get your Band of Brothers together. I can't say it enough. Is go find a couple of those guys, go build your team that you can win and fail with, alongside your family. We're leading our families. We have to lead ourselves to do that. And that is our A1 team But having those guys with us to be able to work through things and to have fun and have that kind of camaraderie that is different. It's hard to explain if you haven't been on a team or if you haven't had those friends, but it'll pay dividends over and over and over. And that's where you can also challenge each other, because sometimes we don't see when we're messing up on our truths if we've shared them, and someone that really cares about us is going to tell us when we're doing it. So again, thank you for listening up to this point. And I hope that you can take all these things and apply them to your life on your journey to becoming the skilled dad. You can go and find more about what Terry's doing in the show notes, and go on our website, SkilledDad.com. You can follow SkilledDad at SkilledDad on all the socials. But again, most important thing is share this with other people, because the more love we can spread and help each other out, man, it's going to be a great spot for us and our kids. And that's why we're doing this podcast. So we'll see you next time. You're listening to The Skilled Dad.